What is up, everybody? Welcome in to your Wednesday night episode of Shout at Buffalo Bills Football Podcast. We're well rested. Ryan Talbot, Matt Parrino, after the marathon of the draft, 3 episodes in 3 nights. Had a couple days to decompress, put our thoughts together, and we're kind of going to reset the deck here a little bit tonight, Ryan, because the Bills went out and they've drafted 10 players. They got a bunch of UDFAs that they're adding to the mix. Now we have a kind of a really good idea, our first real solid impression of what this roster is going to be. I want to kind of take stock here and see where there might be a couple of different areas of concern. I put it out to the insider text line today, got to kind of felt where they're at in terms of concerns and where they're confident. We'll get into all of that today. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Like you said, it was quite the marathon over the last weekend, but now the draft is in the books and we can start looking ahead to this roster and the 2024 season.
So I'm going to bring up the Our Lads 2D depth chart for the Bills. And I think they do a really good job of, from outside all of these markets, from a national perspective, putting together what this thing potentially can look like. And they're unbelievable, actually, because you see a Bills player or a free agent added or a player added to a roster, they're on that depth chart over at Our Lads in like seconds. It's almost like the Wikipedia of depth charts. So we'll get into that a little bit, but I want to start with the area of concern after the draft. So I got 3 very common responses from the insider text line. Wide receiver, even still, after the Bills go out and add Keon Coleman, obviously one receiver in the draft. The only other 2 additions, Curtis Samuel and Mac Hollins. The Bills go out and get those 2 players, Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs, a ton of targets, almost 200 last year, or maybe a little bit over 200 last year, and now playing elsewhere. So that's number one concern for a lot of Bills fans. Number 2, safety still. Even after the Bills go out and draft, spend a second-round draft pick on Cole Bishop. We'll talk about that in a moment. The third, I think, is a very, very common one, edge rusher. The Bills add Javon Solomon in the draft, but really this offseason, other than bringing back A.J. Epinesa, losing Leonard Floyd, you have not replaced the production of a guy that, led the Bills in sacks a season ago. He goes to San Francisco. And I know the Bills are banking on Von Miller. They almost have to from a cash perspective, but I get the concern there. You have a completely different idea, something that wasn't really conveyed a ton on the insider text line. Who do you got as what do you have as the most concerning position?
Yeah, for me, it's cornerback, Matt. And, I know that they did draft Daquan Hardy in the 6th round of the draft, but he is a slot cornerback. He is someone that could handle returns for you. You already have Taron Johnson in that role. I felt like the outside cornerback spot was going to be an area where this team addressed it maybe in those middle rounds, found some more depth. And when you look at the top 3 on paper, on the outside, that is, it looks okay. Rasul Douglas came along and had a really nice season last year, but he is 30 now. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. Christian Benford on the other side, great young cornerback, but he's been banged up a few times here early on in his career. And then you have the uncertainty of Kaiir Elam. When you run down the rest of this list, it's Kyron Brown, Jamarcus Ingram, obviously Taron Johnson in the slot, as we've mentioned, Cam Lewis, Kendall Williamson, and that's it. And then, like I said, Hardy added to the mix, and then maybe some UDFAs along the way. I feel like cornerback is an area where they need some help.
Ryan Talbot, excuse me, Kenny Lovely. Welcome on down, UDFA extraordinaire, the latest version of Jamarcus Ingram. Listen, the Bills do some really good work in the UDFA period at cornerback. Like, I mean, historically going back, I mean, Cam Lewis was an ad there. Levi Wallace, probably the most, accomplished UDFA from CB. But going back to Sean McDermott's time as head coach, Brandon Beane as the general manager, the Bills have found talent in that pool and brought them in. I agree. And listen, Jonathan Cruz in our insider text line, he actually shared this as well. He said, my biggest concern would be cornerback. And I say that because I'm still wary of Benford staying healthy, and the jury is still out on Kaiir Elam, and Ingram can step up and play a significant role if they're needed to. Losing Jackson and Neal hurts the depth. Loves the Hardy pick, but thinks he will 100% make the team as a punt returner and backup slot. But again, He's a backup slot and doesn't really help you a lot on the boundary. I think I'm a little bit more bullish on Kyer Elam in this, you know, new world without a lot of the old folks that were in that building. I mean, you think about John Butler. Obviously, him and Kyer didn't get along. We had John on the show a couple weeks ago. Great coach. I think he's the reason why that secondary has been good, so good. But if you want to try to unlock Kyer a little bit, it almost felt like a change in direction in that room was necessary. And I think bringing in Jamil Adai, somebody that, you know, has been coaching down in Florida, probably very familiar with Kyer Elam. I know at different schools, but with, you know, from his time at Florida while Adai was at Miami, you know, maybe you can sell, you know, to him. You got to get this guy to a place where, you know, he's contributing because you used a first round draft asset on him. And, you know, maybe to Joe Biscaglia's point earlier in the offseason, the return on investment won't be that great if you were to trade him. You got to get him to a place where he can play and he can contribute if called upon. And listen, I still go back to this point on Elam, Ryan. I don't think it's been necessarily as bad as some have painted it when he has been asked to play. And I think what he really needs more than anything, you go in with Benford and you go in with Douglas. Those are your starting two corners. But if he has to play an extended amount of time, I think that could only be a good thing to maybe unlock some confidence in his game and see what it looks like if he finally gets some reps. It's going to be a very important preseason training camp for Kyer Elam.
It's a huge training camp for Kyer Elam. You know, right now you're looking at him as, is this guy a bust? Is this someone that has not been given the opportunity, can step up and truly contribute? I don't expect him to win one of the starting jobs on the outside. I just don't with Rasul and Christian Benford. Maybe he surprises and they give him a legitimate shot. But if he can step up and be that top reserve on the outside, that would definitely help me in terms of what my biggest issue is with this roster.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Let's go to the edge rusher department because I think that's where I'm landing as my biggest area of concern. And it's an area of concern because the Bills are going to face elite offenses in the playoffs.
Mhm.
I mean, if you think about the Houston Texans, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Baltimore Ravens, and I didn't even mention the defending two-time Super Bowl champ Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, it's a gauntlet in the AFC. And so I'm very concerned with their consistent ability to get pressure. They're going to probably need a Leonard Floyd-esque signing or something close to that department. Check out the depth chart here. Greg Rousseau and AJ Epinesa right now penciled in as your starters. And listen, you could do worse. Like I still think that there's a lot of untapped potential for both of those guys, especially as pass rushers. But beyond them, Von Miller behind Rousseau and now Javon Solomon behind Epinesa. Kingsley Jonathan still on the roster. I think that training camp battle between Solomon and Jonathan is going to be interesting. And they have Casey Toohill, who they bring over from Washington. He's had his moments, but you know, I think that he is a fringe, you know, roster bubble kind of guy. He'll have to really, you know, have a performance this summer as a special teamer to make the roster. I'm very concerned about the lack of depth at that position as we sit here on May 1st.
There's definitely a glaring hole there in terms of who can consistently get to the quarterback. And, you know, Von Miller, we don't know what we're getting in Von Miller in 2024. You would think it has to be something significantly better than what we saw in 2023, of course, but that's no guarantee. AJ Epinesa, though, I thought before that rib injury was having a career year, so there's some optimism there. Greg Rousseau, you know, the pass rushing hasn't necessarily developed maybe at the pace that I would have thought, but he's become an elite run defender. So there's some strength there. I do like that combination. And then on the back end, you mentioned Kingsley Jonathan. There's Cameron Klein, who I thought almost made the 53-man roster last year. I think he is someone to keep an eye on. Solomon's someone that intrigues me because they're going away from that prototypical size, height, weight that they have been doing since this regime has started in terms of their edge rushers. So he intrigues me, but I'm not expecting much out of him as a rookie. So I get those that are putting the edge rushers in their biggest area of concern. I think they're really solid against the run, and you know, not trying to downplay the edge rusher position or the worries. This is a league now, Matt, where so many quarterbacks get the ball out of their hands so quickly that unless you have one of the best of the best. It almost feels like those great edge rushers sometimes will go weeks going against certain quarterbacks where they don't get after them. They don't get the sacks. They don't get the pressures that they typically do because the ball comes out so quickly. I don't think that was necessarily the Bills' thinking in this draft. I'm sure they would have taken an edge rusher if it had been the highest player on their board. But I'm not as low on this edge rusher group as I am, like I said, the cornerbacks. And you could definitely make a case for wide receiver and safety, which was also on that list.
I agree with you, everything that you just said there. The biggest like unknown for me is like what version of Von Miller are you getting?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think with just Greg Rousseau and AJ Epinesa, if you're just getting the guys that they've been with no, jumps, and listen, they're both playing for new contracts. So I would imagine that you're gonna, it's safe to kind of bake in there some a jump in production. The Miller part of this is like it was such a hardship for him to generate pressure last year. We got to the point at the end of last season, Ryan, where Von Miller recorded a quasi pressure and we were like, stop the presses. Like,
Right.
let's have a whole show about it. That can't be the case next year. He's got to be the guy that he was at the beginning of the 2022 season when he signed with the Bills as a free agent. And I just don't know at his age if he can get back to that spot and carry the load for this group. And maybe Rousseau could take a step and carry the load. And to your point, they can kind of mix and match. They got some fun young players, depending on how much they ask them to play. And there's guys out there. Like, I want to get into the let me get your thoughts on Von Miller, and then we'll talk about some of the guys that are still maybe on the free agent market.
Yeah, Von Miller. I mean, my thoughts are pretty much what you said a few minutes ago. You don't know what you're getting here. You would love to get the version of the player that you had when you first signed him. What was it? 8 sacks in about 8 games or about 10 games in that range. He was showing why they brought him on. And then since that injury, though, it's been a very slow go. And you expect that with his age. You expect that it's just common with almost any player coming back from an ACL injury like that or a lower body injury. It takes time. So I'm not surprised at how ineffective he was last year. And you're right. I remember the exact episode where we said he almost got to the quarterback, had his hands on him, just didn't bring him down. We thought that was a great sign of this, this flash from him. And you need a lot more than that in 2024.
I'm looking at the Pro Football Focus grades, and they're obviously not be all end all when it comes to grading quarterback or pass rushers or any position. Greg Rousseau and AJ Epinesa ranked 28th and 30th in pass rush grade at 76.2 and then 75 overall. Total pressures according to PFF. Rousseau is 62, Epinesa with 33. So I feel like, to me, that could be a big difference maker. If Epinesa is able to, in a larger role now, kind of stepping in for Leonard Floyd, have an uptick in production as somebody that causes pressure off the edge, that to me is a potential huge game changer.
Oh, big time game changer. If he steps up, if Rousseau steps up, if there's someone that we're not expecting steps up, maybe there's a player at this position that has a Terrell Bernard type glow up and they show up this season and they take us by storm. We're not expecting it, but it happens. Maybe it's an Ed Oliver type leap that we saw last year from the Epinesa or the Rousseaus, a guy that's been in the system for a few years, and then just something kind of unlocks for them, whether it's the offseason training where they do something different to get them ready, whatever it is. We don't know right now. But at the end of the day, someone absolutely needs to step up on this unit.
All right, so here are some of the free agent options on the market currently, and there's this time of year, every year, I'm kind of looking at this list and I'm like, man, how are all these guys still on the open market? So
there's one guy before you even name him that I wouldn't be surprised the Bills signed because I've shown interest in him in the past.
I know exactly.
Emmanuel Ogbah.
There you go. He's right at the top of the list. So
that's who I would expect.
So Ogbah, Carl Lawson, Yannick Ngakoue. Think back a couple of years, and that was the apple of Bills Mafia's eye for sure. Calais Campbell, I don't know if he is announced. He's not. He's more of he's kind of a DT. I don't know if I don't know if he makes a ton of sense. Tyus Bowser, Jerry Hughes at almost 36 years old. I don't know if he's made an announcement. Bud Dupree is another guy that's super interesting. Hasn't really worked in Atlanta the last couple of years. And where did he sign as a free agent? He signed with Tennessee. it didn't go well there either. Of that group, the thing with Ogba that kind of is a small like put off for me is that as a pure pass rusher, I don't know if he's bringing the kind of juice that like a Leonard Floyd did a year ago. And by
Right.
the way, he's going to be 31 next season.
No, that's more than fair. I don't know if you're going to get the same productivity. I think I look at him as a 7, 8 sack guy, maybe at most. And as a part of a rotational piece, that's a-okay. That's not a terrible thing to have. If I was going solely based on the names that you provided, I would probably look at Yannick Ngakoue in terms of the pass rusher, but he is a liability in the run game. He is not a very good run defender. That alone is what makes me think maybe the Bills have never really pursued him. Price point's been another issue for him over the past few contracts that he's been given. But if you don't play the run as well as you do, the pass, the Bills don't necessarily love those types of players. So at this point, maybe they get desperate enough where they say, you know what, we should bring him in as that situational pass rusher. He probably has the most juice from that perspective.
1 year, $10.5 million contract he got from the Bears a season ago. And honestly, Ryan, the numbers don't really blow you away. At 34 pressures in 592 snaps. So right around that AJ Epinesa line. And let me actually see, because Epinesa had 33. Epinesa played 438 snaps. So it's 33 pressures from an Epinesa in almost 180 less snaps.
Yeah.
As a pass rushing grade, 47.6 for Ngakoue compared to 75 for Epinesa. I'm wondering if this is more of a situation he's on the market because nobody really wants him at this point.
I think that's a fair point. I think that some of these guys, they're really going to have to lower their asking price, take incentive laden deals where they can try to earn some money back. But now that we've hit that time period where one, the compensatory pick formula no longer is in play in terms of who you sign, the money no longer factors into that formula itself in terms of who gets comp picks. So maybe one or two of them get a decent deal. But as we get closer and closer to the summer, whoever's sitting out there, they're going to sign for a low amount, whether it's in camp or after camp.
All right, let's go to the wide receiver room here because that was one position that was brought up as a concern on the insider text line. And by the way, if you want to participate a little bit on another level, if you will, in the show, in all of our coverage, sign up to be an insider today, 716-528-6727, or go to joinsubtext.com/shout Buffalo Bills. That'll get you a 2-week free trial, $3.99 a month after that. And I know what they're saying, Ryan. They're probably like, well, the draft's over. We got a couple months before training camp. Why should I sign up right now? Well, rookie minicamp next week, 3 weeks of OTA practices, 2 days of mandatory minicamp, at least, maybe 3. We will take you inside all of that like never before. I feel like our camp coverages, whether it be minicamp, OTAs, rookie camp, and training camp, it's unmatched. So this is a really good time to get in there and become an insider.
Absolutely. And during our draft coverage too, we had a lot of people saying, thanks so much for the intel that you provided. As soon as these practices, as soon as these OTAs get started, you get our insights immediately before anyone else. It's well worth it. Check out the Insider Text Line, Bills Mafia.
The Shout text line is brought to you by Carrie C. Byer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litro, located at 237 Main Street in Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know seriously injured, give them a call, 716-852-1234, or check out litrolaw.com. All right, before we get to this wide receiver room, Ryan, we got to get to Wingnuts on May 17th, 6 p.m. Man, I cannot wait. It's going to be 2 days after the start of rookie camp. So we're going to give you all of our impressions on Keon Coleman, Cedric Van Pran Granger, Dwayne Carter, Cole Bishop, all the way down the line. Tyler Grable. I know everybody's going to want the inside scoop on the former high school quarterback. We'll have it all at Wingnuts on May 17th.
Yeah, looking forward to that show. Always love coming to Wingnuts. Then we'll have those rookies to discuss. You mentioned, Cedric the Centertainer, as Catherine Fitzgerald called him. Love that name. The British Bulldog in the 7th round with their last pick. I love that one as well. So some great nicknames already for this group and a lot of personality for sure.
All right, wide receiver room.
Yep.
Do you have the depth chart up or no?
I have the roster, so I don't have the depth chart, but I mean I have the
Okay,
roster in front of me.
let's do the exercise. First boundary wide receiver. Who's the number one on the list?
I mean, I would probably have Curtis Samuel and Keon on the outside. Is that what you're
Okay, so
asking?
our lads has Keon Coleman as
Mhm.
the top left wide receiver boundary. Let's just call it X. On the other side, the Z, they have Khalil Shakir listed,
And
and
I'm
then
fine with that.
Curtis Samuel as the starting slot. It gets more interesting beyond that. So Keon Coleman's backup at the X, which makes a lot of sense. Mac Hollins brought in to
Yeah.
be a blocker primarily. Fine. At the Z, Justin Shorter, number two. Backup slot, Andy Isabella. And then the two boundary backups beyond at the number three slot, Tyrell Shavers at the X and KJ Hamler at the Z. First impressions.
They better add another wide receiver before the start of the season. That's my first impression, Matt. Listen, I mean, maybe KJ Hamler shakes the injury bug. I was as high on Tyrell Shavers as anyone last year. I big fan of his game. I love the fact that they had him on the practice squad for a year. I hope that he comes in and shows this huge jump from year one to year two. And for the Justin Shorter hive, same deal. I hope that fan base is telling everyone I told you so on social media all summer long and all season long. But there's so much unknown there beyond those, even I would say the top four. Mac Hollins has put up respectable numbers at times in his career when called upon to be a receiver. I love the fact that you can interchange those top three in the positions. I don't think they're going to necessarily make Keon Coleman play in the slot a lot, but he projects well as a big slot receiver at times. So if you can get him in there occasionally, I don't hate it. But Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel, they're interchangeable parts inside outside. So I like all of that. There's just so much unknown after. And I get it. A guy like DJ Chark doesn't sit there and put you over the top as a Super Bowl contender or put you in the big game. But there's definitely more of a he's proven over his career that he can contribute. And there are other guys like that on the market as well. And Odell Beckham Jr. would be the high end of that. They've shown it before, and I don't even know if he's a great fit depending on what he's asking for. But there are guys out there that I think could come in here and at least be a 20, 25 reception type contributor, make a few key catches when they're called upon, and be good backup depth.
Don't come after me on social media, folks. I know that this is not going to be a very popular or highly received take here. I like the idea of Odell Beckham Jr. I think adding him to the mix here gives you like that. I think he probably plays more of the Z at this point. I know he played a lot of slot for LA when they went to the Super Bowl. But I think where he wins and what you'd ask him to do, and potentially as a guy that can help bring Keon Coleman along, I think you like what he adds. I think Chark's interesting. He struggles to stay healthy, and I don't know if you're talking about KJ Hamler, who's in a completely different spot. And some people talk about, like, I see this comment here from Cam Miller. Shout out to Cam Miller. He always comments and watches our stuff. How much of a headache is Odell Beckham Jr. versus the perception of the headache that he is? Because he didn't seem like a headache when the situation was right in LA, right?
Sure.
Last year, he might have been a headache, but I have serious like issues with the leadership at times that we see from Lamar Jackson. There were leadership concerns in Cleveland with Baker Mayfield early in his career. And I'm not really putting that on Baker as much. He's a very young player, still trying to find his way, multiple offensive coordinators. You throw a guy like Odell into the mix where, a lot of noise was happening that, things went off the rails in New York and he was looking for a fresh start. The way that they made such sweet music in LA with Odell Beckham Jr. before the injury, and maybe he's never going to be that version of the player again. And that's a very fine argument if that's the one that you're going to make. But I think as a player, what he did opposite Cooper Kupp in that run in the playoffs was a big reason why they made it to Super Bowl and a big reason why they were in position to win that Super Bowl. He was on his way to being the
MVP.
MVP of that game. And I see a lot of people saying OBJ is washed. It's like he was coming off from an injury last year, and he was in an offense run by a quarterback that historically struggles to, first of all, spread the ball around. It's been a tight end oriented offense the entire time Lamar Jackson has been in the league. Listen, I know this is crazy because people think that I'm like some OBJ apologist or something like that. I just think that there's still more meat on that bone. The Bills entertained this before. He's close with Von Miller. And if you look at the options, Ryan, what would you rather have? Would you rather have Odell Beckham Jr.? What about maybe Zay Jones, who we have to talk about here in a second? Tyler Boyd, Michael Thomas, who comes with his own baggage, Allen Robinson, who just hasn't been viable in this league for like 3 or 4 years,
Right.
and that's not injury related. So there's just not a lot of like super exciting options. If the money's right on Beckham Jr., I think it's worth a dart, considering what he was in LA 2 years ago. I'm going solely based off that.
And based on the headache aspect of it, I don't think he was necessarily a headache in Baltimore, despite being in an offense that didn't showcase his talent very well, or what he could do, or give him some targets that he would typically want in another system. I know that he was happy winning. They were the number one seed. They did a lot of good things, but it wasn't an offense that showed off his skill set at all. So of those names, he definitely makes the most sense. The price has to be right. The interest from both sides needs to be there as well. And there are some comments in here about the wide receiver that just signed from Detroit. Separation issues, not great speed, missed all of the 2023 season due to a gambling suspension. I wouldn't call him a roster lock right now. He did some good things early in his career in Detroit, but he was also put on the IR his final 2 years there. 2021, 2022. So injuries are also another factor to weigh there on Cephas. How do you say the last? I
I
might
go
have butchered
Cephas, Quintez
Cephas.
Cephas, yeah.
Yep.
No, I think that's a great point. I'm not putting a lot of stock into that addition. Kind of reminds me of, even a guy like Brian Thompson. I know that like a little bit different places in their careers, but a guy that comes in battling for a roster spot. Sometimes those tickets get cashed, right? Like maybe somebody makes a roster, and we'll see, how he does in training camp. But I'm not really factoring him in a lot. Let's go to Zay Jones for a second, Ryan. He was obviously released by the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are, they drafted Brian Thomas Jr. They have, who do they bring in free agency? They have Christian Kirk. Let me bring up there.
Gabe Davis.
Oh yeah, great. Gabe Davis.
What?
Dude, that was a huge opportunity for you to just absolutely dunk on me. You're too nice. Like you gotta bring the heat sometimes.
I am.
So I'm out on the Zay Jones idea. Number one, there's just baggage there that, when you had him in your building before there, I think you got a good read on the guy, and you shipped him out for a specific reason. And now he's gone on to have some success at a couple different spots. Good for Zay Jones. I enjoyed all my conversations with him when he was here. But I'm going to say that's a big no. I actually thought like down the stretch in the playoffs, even in December, I was watching some of those Jacksonville games, and he just shrunk in those big moments. So I'm out on the idea of Zay Jones. A lot of people have tried to get that on our radar on the insider text line. I think Brandon Beane probably lets him sign elsewhere. If they're going to add a free agent wide receiver, it's going to be somewhere else. And listen, over the next couple of months, there might be even more players that hit the market that could be interesting in their own way.
Yeah, you read my mind there. There's going to be some other cuts here post draft in terms of they were able to get a player at the position, and they can cut someone that's getting a little bit more, that maybe the production doesn't match the price point. So that's a part of it. Training camp, there'll be a few surprise cuts as well in the final cuts. So the Bills do still have some options that we don't even know about at this time. I don't know if, you're not going to be trading for any big salary contract players even after post June 1st, but there might be a trade opportunity for someone that is making more modest money as well. So things just kind of keep your eyes on here.
Listen, I'm not, I don't know if I first saw this comment and I'm like, are we putting this up here? Like what's going on here? But hey, it's a super chat from Aaron Judge Lover 4000. Go Yankees for those in the comments, hoping that I'm wearing an MLB hat, hoping it's a Yankees hat. It is not. I'm not going to turn it around and let you see what it is because I don't want to break your hearts. But I tell people this all the time about my baseball fandom, quote unquote. We go to a lot of different games, a lot of different parks. My son's a little league baseball player, and so I got a lot of different hats, man. I don't really got a team. I just like the swag, Ryan. Is that a problem?
No, I don't think it's a problem. I can respect that. Picking up the swag is something that I think a lot of us do.
Memories at each park. This is a Mets hat. I apologize. Daniel Jones greater than Aaron Rodgers greater than Josh. I'm guessing Allen. Unfortunately, epic troll job. Thank you for the super
Wild.
chat. We'll just leave that there, and we'll take it screen and we'll move right along. We appreciate that 199, buddy. But I gotta say, you might be out of your mind. All right. Next, where do you want to go next, Ryan? Oh, I want to talk about Hamler real quick before we move
Yeah,
on.
sure.
So he hasn't played a snap in the NFL since October 30th, the day before Halloween, 2022. So well over a year and a half. If he does make the active roster and does play a regular season game, it'll almost be 2 years since he played an NFL football game. And I went back real quick to his draft profile. He gets drafted in the second round by the Denver Broncos in 2020. Ran he doesn't have his 40 time here, but I think it was somewhere in the 4.3s. If I'm at a pro day or what they thought he would run, whatever the case may be. His NFL comp was Tavon Austin, and in his strengths category, it said field stretcher from the slot, explosive athletic ability with sub 4.4 speed. Showed press shake against Ohio State cornerback Jeff Okudah, which in hindsight, I don't know if that was necessarily any great accomplishment. Separation burst to open the passing window. That's the big point that I wanted to kind of get in here, because if you're worried about Keon Coleman's separation profile, maybe KJ Hamler can be somebody that fits into what they want in that department in more of like a flanker role that he kind of played in Denver. And Ryan, if you remember back to the 21 season, and I think maybe early 2022, there were some explosive plays in there. And that's what I
Yeah.
think the Bills are betting on with this future contract.
And yeah, that's just it. You're hoping he stays healthy, hoping he flashes what he did a little bit in Denver. I want to say it was a 4.29, by the way, for his 40 time.
Ooh,
I
okay.
wanted to look that up though. Because
Do
that's
it.
pretty blazing fast.
Do it. Look it
So
up.
Hamler himself is intriguing, but there's so many receivers that fall into that umbrella. Well, if they stay healthy, they could do this. He is still a very young wide receiver prospect. He still, he did flash at times, so he's worth bringing to camp. Absolutely. It was kind of like the Andy Isabella move last year where fans were very high on it. So yeah, definitely look at a player like that, see what he can do, and hope for the best.
So he had 224 snaps in 2022, played 179 on the boundary and only 45 in the slot. In 21, he played almost equal, 45-41. So 88 snaps in 21. Man, this dude has been banged up. And then in 2020, his rookie season, he played out wide 181 times, 336 in the slot. So he was definitely kind of following that scouting report as a rookie, kind of moved to the outside a little bit more 2 years later. I think they probably put Judy in the slot a little bit more as well. But I think there's some versatility to his game. Sometimes you need to get your body right. And I think that I'm looking forward to getting to first week of OTAs. I think everybody's going to make a beeline over to KJ Hamler to get a chance to talk to him a little bit and learn about, all right, what's this last year been like away from football, getting your body right. It's a very low risk bet that the Bills are making, but I definitely think having him in the mix, I wonder how much that lessens the urgency for Brandon Beane to go out and get another wide receiver or spend on a wide receiver, I should say.
Right. Yeah, I think it absolutely would lessen. And Renaissance Man here says he ran a 4.27, so even faster than I thought. The speed is there. And, we did hear Brandon Beane at one point in this offseason saying, yeah, we're looking for speed. And they didn't go that route in the draft, and that's fine. They had Coleman in mind for that ideal target in the draft, but Hamler could be that speed option. Super chat here from Joshua Richardson. Thank you, Joshua. What's up, fellas? Great show as always. How do you feel about trading for Treylon Burks or signing Tyler Boyd? It sounds like Tyler Boyd has some interest right now, Matt. I think he was on a visit with possibly the Chargers, if I remember reading that.
Okay.
So he might not be on the market much longer. Burks, he hasn't looked great early in his career. And again, the Bills did their own evaluations on him when he came out. They probably have a binder on him. If they're high enough on him, the risk reward factor of it, yeah, I wouldn't hate the move, but he hasn't shown much to date.
All right, so I have a video here. I want to get into that, but let's first Drew Lock, man. This is a throwback and a half. I'm out on the idea of trading for Treylon Burks, by the way. Like if you're talking about a separation issue that you're concerned about with Keon Coleman, you're not getting any better with adding Treylon Burks, who has just struggled. And listen, there might be still a way for him to find success in the league, but I'm just not betting on that at this point. All right, let's bring this video in here. Let me see if it plays. You seeing the video? You know how tech is on this thing. You see this video here?
Video. I see it. Yeah, I'm not.
Okay. Can you see the video playing right now, or is it paused?
It's paused right now.
Okay, I want to play it. So now watch down at the bottom of the screen. That's KJ Hamler lining up in kind of like he's definitely the main boundary player. So it's a 2 wide receiver set. He's out wide here. Single coverage, play action pass from Drew Lock. Explosive speed, blows by the dude. He's down the field. 2 guys running after him. Boom, gone. That's what you're hoping for, right? That's what you bring in a guy like KJ Hamler, because if you could unlock that, add that to the offense, and he could bring you something, and he doesn't even have to play a ton. Like you can have him in like an Isaiah McKenzie role with just a little bit more of a different skill set. It doesn't have to be a huge target share or snap share.
No, exactly. And that's just it. Bring him out, have him play. I think you and I both wanted to see more from Deontay Hardy last year in
Right.
terms of the Bills trying to utilize him. Have a plan for him. He doesn't have to be an every down player. He doesn't have to play more than 10 snaps a game, maybe. But give him those opportunities, those big play hits downfield where Josh can just kind of throw it up and try to get it to him down the field, because I think a lot of what they're trying to do right now with the Keon Coleman pick, what we saw last year down the stretch, they know that the way defenses have been playing them, it's been tough to go downfield, hit those deep balls. So they're going to go to the intermediate short range with the passes, try to move the chains, be a little bit more patient, utilize the run. But if they start doing a good job with that, Matt, that's when Hamler can hurt defenses, because defenses will have to adjust to the way the Bills are playing. And that's where you get that deep part of the field again. And that's maybe where Hamler can be that bread and butter for this Bills offense.
All right, I want to get to one of the texts that we got in today from our good buddy Skip Cressy. Guys, I appreciate your dedication. Like we said, the insider text line, it's been a buzzing over the last week, and it is only going to get more ramped up over the next couple of weeks. 716-528-6727. Send a text or go to joinsubtext.com/shoutbuffalobills. Put in your number. You'll get a message back with details on how to sign up. 2-week free trial, $3.99 a month after that. David Edwards and Connor McGovern are concerns. This is the only person I got this from. Here's the other point that I really want to zero in on, though, Ryan. Can James Cook stop dropping touchdown passes, and concern over his fumble issues? I believe he is on a short leash with Sean McDermott. So here's my thing with James Cook.
Yeah.
I put in the headline that I think that there's some boom or bust potential with one player, and I made it a little bit mysterious. And James Cook is established. I mean, he led this running back group. He was very successful as a runner, as a pass catcher last year. But we don't talk a ton about maybe the loss in confidence for James Cook throughout the season because of some very untimely drops in the passing game. When Brandon Beane was talking about the wide receiver position a couple days ago, he said, well, don't forget, Dalton Kincaid is a pass catcher. James Cook is a pass catcher. Well, if that's the case, what happens early in the season if he's got a touchdown in his hands and he drops it? Like, where does that put him in the pecking order? And if James Cook is expected to be this huge contributor in the passing game, if he's not contributing, how bad of a problem is that for this passing game and this offense?
It'd be a huge problem. And yes, those drops were frustrating. There were multiple drops that just went off of his hands where he would have had a walk-in touchdown where he was entering the end zone on some of them, and 2 or 3 touchdown drops in this season alone. But he also made some spectacular grabs, and he made some great added some great yards after the catch for this team. I'm sure that James Cook this offseason has focused on becoming more of a pass catcher, working on that. He was the best pass catching back in his draft class. So I shouldn't even say work on it. It's already been part of his game. But work on the drops and work on, catching a little bit, doing a better job of bringing in, securing the ball, and maybe not looking upfield first before you have it secured, whatever the case may be. But no, I think that there are big things ahead for James Cook. I think that this offense is going to, at times, even run through him, like we saw in the Dallas game last year. There were times where it was James Cook. This is your show. Move the chains. Let's kill the clock. Let's put up points. And Josh Allen didn't have to be Superman for those moments. It's few and far between because Josh Allen is still obviously always going to be that number one weapon for this team. But I have high expectations for James Cook and what we're going to see from him this year.
He had 6 drops in the regular season, 1 drop in the playoffs. And I mean, for a running back, when you're talking about the target share not being super massive, I mean, he had targets last season, don't get me wrong, 54 targets, 44 catches. So his catch rate was pretty good. Drop percentage, though, at 11.1% is not where you want to see it for a guy that you want to be a big part of your offense. And listen, last year was the most football that James Cook has ever played. Okay. Like if you put his rookie season and his entire college career together, I think there's a couple of stats where he like surpassed what he did in all of those years combined. So my worry level for James Cook is very low, but it's something that's kind of in the back of my mind as we get to the season. We know Sean McDermott at times gets very impatient with running backs. We've seen it over the course of his career in Buffalo. And I just wonder if you start to make some mistakes and you have a guy like Ty Johnson, who's in year 2 in the system. You have a guy, you go out and you spend a 3rd or 4th round draft pick on Ray Davis, adding him to the mix. You wonder how that kind of plays out because James Cook views himself as RB1. He wasn't shy about letting everybody know about that before the start of last season.
No, absolutely not. And I liked that. I liked the confidence. I liked what we saw from him, but you like the compliment of Ty Johnson too and what he can do. And you add a running back in this draft class, that's probably the perfect complement in terms of short yardage back, power back, can block really well already, which is a big thing for Sean McDermott in the backfield, protect Josh Allen. So this backfield, in terms of going back to an earlier segment, it's not on my worry list whatsoever.
Somebody in the comments asked about Stephon Diggs's drops last season. He only had an 8 actually, which was only 2 more than in the regular season than James Cook. Obviously, the one that he had in the playoffs was memorable. But I don't know. I don't think that's neither here nor there. I think if you're elevating James Cook into a larger role, the expectations are going to get turned up a little bit on him. And it's year 3. So I'm very bullish on James Cook's ability to take that added responsibility and run with it. So we'll see what happens there. All right, Ryan, where do you want to go next before we get out of here?
We have another super chat, or maybe I would call it a donation at this point. Should we move DeMar to wide receiver? No, I don't. Thank you for the $1.99. Same with Aaron Judge Lover. We appreciate the donation to the show.
Yeah. No, I think the only thing that we had to go off of in terms of like ability with the ball in your hand is from DeMar Hamlin was in the playoff game on the fake punt. Didn't go well. I mean, maybe he breaks that for a 15-yard run. Maybe we could talk about getting creative with it. But no, he's in the safety room, played 900 plus snaps for the Bills at safety 2 years ago. A year removed from everything that happened on the field in Cincinnati. He's another guy. I'm very interested in looking at him during the summer, during the spring, seeing what he brings to that competition, because right now DeMar's kind of on the outside looking in, I'd say. If I was power ranking the safety position, you have Mike Edwards and Tanner Rapp, those veteran guys they brought in. They're both making the roster. Then you have Cole Bishop, second round draft pick. He's making the roster. Cam Lewis is back on a 2-year contract. He can play slot corner as well. Huge on special teams. He's making the roster. So, I mean, at this point, DeMar is going to be fighting for a roster spot. And I don't think that they wouldn't keep 5 safeties, especially if he has a role on special teams. But it's going to be a very important summer for DeMar Hamlin.
Huge summer for DeMar Hamlin in terms of
More
making this
donations,
roster.
Ryan.
Hey, thank you, Joshua. I'm thinking maybe Joshua just didn't get his question in there. So, Joshua, if you meant to ask a question as well, put it in the chat. We'll be happy to answer it for you. But thank you for that. So, played on the 6th grade middle school team. Okay. Moving on from that. Matt, real quick, did you have a favorite draft pick or a bold prediction from this draft class after everything was said and done?
Ooh, I like that. Are you coming up with this off the cuff?
I'm off the cuff.
Wow. I love this, dude. Also, there's another topic. We'll save this for next week's show. So we got a request for a show.
Okay.
One of our insiders wants us to grade the 2019 and the 2020 draft class and do a show on that. Now in hindsight, years later.
I like that.
So we'll do that. We'll do that, like a little mini 20-minute show. We'll do that in the next couple of weeks. And then I also want to do where the wide receiver or pass catcher, I should say, targets land next season. So predicting where everybody finishes in the pecking order in total targets and how many each gets. We're gonna flesh that out a little bit, talk about it on a show maybe next week. We are coming to Rochester this summer, twice during training camp is what we're hoping to do. I see that in the comment section too. Sorry, just throwing a lot of stuff out here while it gives me the time to think about your question. Do you have one that you're ready to drop on us? Is that why you brought this up?
I don't think it's overly bold. I have something. I think that at the end of the day, McGovern stays at left guard, and the Bills drafted their center on day 3 of the draft.
Cedric Van Pran Granger.
Yeah.
What is it? SVPG? Oh, you're going to do it? 4? There you go. All right. Listen, the more you learn about this guy, the more you look at his evaluation, his scouting report. And one of the things that is emphasized early in almost every one of them is his ability to get out in space, pull as a center. And that's something that, although Connor McGovern is super athletic, and I'm sure he's going to be able to do it, we're going to be looking at that in training camp and like all of those little moments to see, all right, which guy is getting out in space a little bit more, which one kind of comes downhill. That was the strength, the epitome of value to Mitch Morse's game was his ability to get out on those pin and pull plays and wreak havoc down the field as a blocker. And I think that's one of the areas that Van Pran Granger is going to really exceed. So I really like that pick.
Yeah, high on that pick. I liked a lot of the day 3 picks for different reasons. Obviously, the 2 linemen taken late on day 3, I don't think either make the 53-man roster, but they have a lot of intriguing, skills to their game. I had someone actually ask me if they thought that the British Bulldog, I'm going to keep calling him that, by the way, could handle kick returns because of his rugby background. It cracked me up. It made, he would be a bowling ball with the ball in his hands, but I think they're going to focus on making him an offensive guard. I guess guard is what I saw is what the focal point is here early on for him.
What's the Bills rookie wide receiver record book?
Oh boy, that's bold.
So Sammy Watkins has the most receiving yards by a Bills rookie with 982 yards in 2014. Let's see the most receiving touchdowns. What do you think it is?
Most receiving touchdowns for a rookie? I bet it'll be something that'll actually surprise you. Maybe they weren't like 8, I'll say.
What do you think it is?
8?
Lee Evans with 9 in 2004. Okay. Lee Evans
in
was an
the
absolute stud. Okay.
he
Lee
was.
Evans does not get enough credit. And part of that is we love that dude. I mean, getting a chance to hang out with him in Washington, D.C. last year was amazing. And that was the peak of my fandom, unfortunately for me in 2004. I never had his jersey, though. I had Stevie Johnson, Terrell Owens. I wish I would have had an Evans and not an Owens if I can go back and do it over again.
Mm.
But it was gifted to me. So what are you going to do? All right.
Yeah,
Sammy
same here.
Watkins hit 6. Sorry, go ahead.
No, same here. I had a T.O. Gifted to me by my wife on our wedding day. That was her gift
Yeah.
to me. Yeah.
Wow.
Something
What a
blue.
day. Gabe Davis, 7 receiving touchdowns as a rookie. Number 2 in Bills history. So I
Huh.
think that is going to be my bold prediction. Keon Coleman goes over 8 or more touchdowns as a rookie for the Buffalo Bills. Huge red zone target.
Yeah.
I think he's going to
Catch
have
radius.
opportunities down there. So I'm going to say take the over on Keon Coleman rookie season touchdown catches. I'm not going to go with the receiving yards because I have a take on that we're going to flesh out in a future episode on how the Bills passes are going to be distributed this season. But man, I like Keon Coleman, maybe even threatening the record, maybe hitting 9, tying Lee
Love
Evans.
it.
We'll see.
I love it. That's a great prediction, Matt.
All right, I think that's going to do it. We're going to win almost an hour here on our Wednesday staple show. We'll have much more for you over the next couple of weeks before we kind of take a downshift for a couple weeks before training camp. We're going to bring you a ton of coverage from rookie minicamp, OTAs, mandatory minicamp, all of the observations. If you want them first and you want them the most in-depth, you're going to want to be on the insider text line. They're going to get stuff that doesn't come out in my columns, doesn't come out on the podcast. I mean, that's just where we're going to dump the notebook every single day. So 716-528-6727. 2-week free trial, $3.99 a month after that. Give us a try. Get yourself kind of gassed up for training camp, where it really is going to take off to a whole nother level. May 17th, 6 p.m., Wingnuts, 1402 Millersport Highway, Amherst, New York. See you there 2 days after rookie camp. Ryan Talbot, have yourself a wonderful evening, my friend.
You too, Matt.